I never imagined that managing cameras, keeping up with kids, and juggling a schedule packed tighter than a clown car would be my daily routine. But here I am, 39 years old, living in a whirlwind that swings from calm to chaos in the blink of an eye. My name is Tanya Burr, and if my life had a headline, it would read, Photographer, Mom, Balances Family, Freelance, and Frustration. Every day begins with a mad dash. My camera gear lives in one corner of the living room, my kids' backpacks are usually flung in another, and somewhere in the middle of it all is me, standing in leggings and an oversized hoodie, sipping lukewarm coffee and trying to remember what day of the week it is. My husband, Mike, is technically still my partner in this circus, but lately he's more of a ghost in our home. He works as a sales rep for a company that has branches in 3 different cities, which basically means he's always gone or always about to be gone. I can't remember the last time we sat down for dinner without him being distracted by his buzzing phone or an email that just couldn't wait. Our kids, Lily and Max, are both in school now. Lily is 10 going on 16, sassy, smart, and absolutely convinced she's ready for her own phone. Max is 7, an energetic whirlwind who seems to exist in a permanent state of motion. They're great kids, but between homework, soccer practice, and endless school forms, they keep me running on fumes. Mama, have you seen my math book? Lily's voice jolted me out of my thoughts one morning as I rifled through my camera bag, trying to find a missing lens cap. It's probably buried under the clothes mountain in your room, I answered, not even glancing up. Then Max came bouncing into the room, his soccer ball thumping against the wall like a heartbeat. Mom, you gotta sign this form, it's for my field trip. Okay, give it here, I said, grabbing the paper with one hand while clutching my camera with the other. The ink from the pen smeared a little, but at that point, perfection was not a luxury I could afford. The kids scattered as quickly as they came, leaving behind a trail of noise, energy, and crumbs. And then came the familiar creak of the front door. Mike? He stepped inside like a breeze blowing through, just enough to be felt, not enough to stay. Hey, Mike, how was your day? I asked, out of habit more than expectation. Same as always. Got another trip tomorrow, he said, barely looking up from his phone. I took a deep breath. I was thinking maybe this weekend we could take the kids out, do something fun, together. Yeah, maybe. I'll have to see what's going on, he replied, scrolling through something on his screen. Right, of course. I didn't even try to hide the disappointment in my voice. It's always maybe. The rest of the evening played out like a well-worn script. Dinner, homework, bedtime routines. Then finally, after tucking in the kids and cleaning up the remains of dinner, I stepped out onto the porch with my camera. The night sky was particularly clear. I pointed my lens toward the moon, letting its soft glow fill the frame. It was my moment of peace, brief, silent, and fleeting. But even as I stood there, the quiet buzzing in my brain never really stopped. Unanswered emails, clients waiting for edited photos, bills stacked like bricks in the kitchen drawer, and the question that came back again and again, whispering louder with each passing night, when will things change? The truth was I didn't know. I was hanging on by a thread, pretending like it was part of the design. And then, just when I thought life couldn't get more unpredictable, it did. It happened on a Wednesday morning. I had just dropped the kids off at school and decided to take Buster, our golden retriever, for a quick walk before diving into my editing queue. The sun was shining, but my mind was a storm cloud of deadlines and discontent. Come on, Buster, let's make this quick. Mommy's got a lot to do, I muttered, half tugging his leash as we rounded the corner near the park. That's when Buster saw it, a stray cat sauntering across the sidewalk like it owned the place. Before I could react, he bolted. The leash jerked out of my hand, and the next thing I knew, I was airborne. I hit the pavement with a painful thud, my leg twisting underneath me. "Buster, stop!" I shouted, wincing in pain. He didn't hear. Or maybe he did and didn't care. Either way, he was gone. I tried to stand, but a sharp pain shot up my leg like an electric jolt. I sat back down, gritting my teeth. Great, just what I needed today. Eventually, I hobbled home, dragging myself up the porch steps with gritted determination. I called Mike. "Hey, I think I hurt my leg. Can you come home early?" There was a pause. "I'm in a meeting, Tanya. Can it wait?" "I just fell, Mike. I'm not calling you for fun," I snapped, heat rising in my chest. "Fine, I'll see what I can do." Click. No comfort. No concern. Just a half-hearted promise and a dial tone. By the time I made it to urgent care and sat through the excruciating wait, I knew what they were going to say. And I was right. Fractured leg. At least 4 to 6 weeks in a cast. No walking, no standing for long periods, and definitely no photo shoots. The doctor's voice was calm and professional as he handed me the crutches. I, on the other hand, was anything but calm. As I limped back into the house later that day, I felt more helpless than I had in years. The strong, independent woman I prided myself on being had suddenly been reduced to hobbling between the couch and the kitchen counter. Mike came home that evening, glancing at the cast like it was a stain on his schedule. "This is a real mess, Tanya. How long till you're back on your feet?" "I don't know, a few weeks at least. It's not like I planned this," I muttered, frustrated. He nodded but said nothing else. That night, I cried silently, my leg aching and my heart even more so. The next few days were a blur of painkillers, Netflix, and forced dependence. Mike was reluctantly pitching in, though he clearly resented the disruption to his routine. I asked him to take over picking the kids up from school. He agreed, but not without sighs and eye rolls. "This can't go on for long," he said one evening. "I've got clients, meetings, deadlines." "So do I, Mike," I snapped. "Or did you forget that I also work?" He didn't respond, just left the room. If there was a silver lining, it was the kids. Lily stepped up in ways I never expected from a 10-year-old. She made sandwiches, folded laundry, and even helped Max with his homework. Max, ever the tornado, tried his best to tone it down, giving me hugs and bringing me snacks from the pantry. One afternoon, Lily sat beside me on the couch. "Do you want tea, Mom?" "Tea would be lovely," I smiled. "Peppermint or chamomile? Surprise me." She returned a few minutes later, mug in hand, pride shining in her eyes. Moments like that reminded me that even in the middle of chaos, there was love. But as the days turned into weeks and the novelty of the cast wore off, the walls started closing in. I was stuck at home, physically and emotionally. Mike was gone more often, claiming urgent meetings and unexpected trips. And I was left with too much time and too many unanswered questions. In an attempt to distract myself, I began browsing photography forums online. I hadn't had the time to engage with those communities in years. It felt good, familiar, even comforting. I looked at photos, commented on posts, even shared a few of my own older favorites. It was like finding a piece of myself again. Then one evening, as I scrolled through a thread titled Best Proposal Captures, something made my heart stop. It was a photo of a man kneeling, ring in hand, in front of a young woman at sunset. The scene was romantic, perfectly composed, but that wasn't what caught my eye. It was the man. He looked exactly like Mike. The same profile, the same haircut, the same navy blue suit I had bought him last Christmas. No, it couldn't be. I blinked, zoomed in. But the more I looked, the less I could deny what I saw. I stared at the screen, my heart pounding like a drum in my chest. Was it him? Was my husband proposing to someone else? My fingers hovered above the keyboard, trembling. I couldn't look away from the image on the screen. The sunset, the glowing couple, the perfect frame. It should have made me smile, but all I could feel was a rising wave of dread that started in my chest and spread outward like wildfire. I told myself it wasn't him. It couldn't be. Maybe the resemblance was just uncanny. Maybe someone out there looked that much like Mike. But in my gut, I knew. That suit, the stance, the hair, the curve of his smile, my stomach twisted. It was like staring at a ghost wearing my husband's face. I took a screenshot. Then I scrolled up to find the photographer's username. Her name was Jenna. I clicked on her profile and found a small portfolio of her work. Weddings, proposals, family portraits. She was local, based in a nearby suburb, Riverdale. Without overthinking it, I messaged her. "Hi, Jenna. I came across your photo of the proposal in Riverdale. It's a lovely shot. Can I ask where it was taken? Just curious." I waited. The reply came quicker than I expected. "Hi, Tanya. Thanks so much. That was actually taken near the Riverdale Botanical Gardens. Beautiful spot, especially at golden hour. Why do you ask?" I hesitated. My fingers paused over the keyboard. "How do you say, I think my husband might be leading a double life and proposing to another woman, without sounding like a total lunatic? Just curious. The man in the photo looks oddly familiar. Could be a coincidence." I hit send and stared at the 3 little dots as she typed. That's interesting. "Yeah, I remember the guy. He was very polite. The girl was really sweet, too. They booked me for a quick engagement shoot, super last minute." "Do you happen to know their names?" I asked, trying to sound light. "Sorry, can't share personal info like that. Client confidentiality." I understood that. Sort of, but that didn't make it easier to swallow. Over the next couple of days, I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. I kept going back to the image, staring at the details, his watch, his shoes, the way he held the ring box. All of it screamed Mike, my Mike, or at least the man I thought I knew. When he came home that Friday evening, I watched him closely. His suitcase rolled in behind him. He set it by the door like always, loosened his tie, walked into the kitchen, and grabbed a beer from the fridge. "Hey," he said casually, cracking the can open. "Hey, how was Riverdale?" He paused just for a beat. "It was fine. Why?" "Just wondering. That's where you were, right?" "Yeah, meetings, long days, tiring." He didn't look at me. He didn't ask why I was asking. He just took a sip and disappeared into his office. I sat on the couch, my cast resting on a pillow, the screenshot still open on my phone, and my heart shattered piece by piece. The following morning, I sent Jenna another message. I dropped the polite tone. "Jenna, I really need your help. I think the man in your photo might be my husband. Please, I'm not trying to invade privacy. I just need to know the truth." There was a long pause. Eventually, she replied, "Oh my gosh, I don't even know what to say. Are you sure?" "I'm not sure. That's why I need to see more photos. Please, I'm desperate." After a full hour of silence, a notification lit up my phone. "Okay, I probably shouldn't, but I get it. I'm sending you a few more from that session. Please keep them to yourself." I opened the folder she sent. My hands shook so badly I nearly dropped my phone. There he was, Mike, down on one knee, holding a ring, gazing up at a young woman I'd never seen before, his eyes filled with emotion. The same look he used to give me years ago. That kind of look doesn't lie. I broke down. The kids were outside playing, and I sat on the couch. The images in front of me, my body curling into itself like I could somehow make the pain smaller if I just folded tight enough. Later that night, after putting the kids to bed, I sat in my room and stared at the ceiling. A storm had begun to brew in my soul, and I knew it wouldn't pass easily. The next morning, I did something I never thought I would do. I Googled private investigator near me. That's how I met Rick. He was in his early 50s, gruff but kind, with eyes that had clearly seen more than their share of broken truths. I met him in a tiny office tucked behind a coffee shop. "This your husband?" he asked, studying the photos I laid on the desk. "Yes," I whispered. "Or at least I thought so." Rick nodded, taking notes. "You want me to track him?" "I want the truth," I said. "Every city he visits, every hotel, every woman." He nodded again. "It'll take time. Are you okay with that?" I wasn't okay with anything, but I nodded anyway. For the next several weeks, I played the role of the clueless wife. I made small talk. I laughed at his jokes. I packed his travel snacks. All the while, my leg continued to heal, and my heart grew colder. Mike, oblivious to my knowledge, kept going about his double life. I started noticing more details. New shirts, expensive ones, fancy shoes I'd never seen him wear before. A different cologne, something muskier, deeper. He'd step out to take calls, whispering behind closed doors. The bathroom had practically become his second office. One night, I couldn't take it anymore. I walked to the door while he was inside, pressed my ear against the wood. "Yeah, I miss you too. Can't wait to see you. No, she doesn't suspect anything." My stomach lurched. He wasn't even careful anymore. That night, I didn't sleep. I just stared out the window, the moonlight casting ghostly shadows across the room. I remembered our wedding day, how he looked at me as I walked down the aisle, how we promised forever. Lies, all of it. A week later, Rick called. "We need to meet," he said. "I have what you asked for." We met in the same small office. He slid a thick envelope across the table. Inside were photos, dozens of them. Mike with different women in different cities, laughing, dining, kissing, holding hands, like he didn't have a wife and kids waiting at home. Receipts, hotel records, restaurant reservations, everything. "He's been at it for a while," Rick said quietly. "At least 2 years. And it's not just one woman." I stared at the evidence, my mind numb. "Thank you," I whispered. He nodded. "What you do next is up to you." I left the office with the envelope clutched in my arms like a bomb that could go off at any second. When I got home, the kids were at school. I placed the folder on the kitchen counter and just stood there. Mike had lied to me for years. He had lied to Lily and Max. He had built an entire separate life, or several of them, while pretending to be a devoted husband and father. I could have confronted him right then. But no, that would be too easy. Too gentle. He didn't deserve that. I wanted him to feel it, to be exposed, humiliated, just like I'd been. So I made a plan. The next week was a flurry of quiet scheming. I set everything in motion. Phone calls, arrangements, invitations. I pretended everything was normal. "Dinner Friday night?" I asked him, smiling sweetly. He looked up from his phone, surprised. "What's the occasion?" "Just felt like it." He shrugged. "Sure, I'll be home by 7. I spent the day preparing his favorite meal: roast chicken, garlic mashed potatoes, a salad with cranberries and walnuts. I even set the table with our wedding china and lit candles like it was some kind of anniversary. I wore a navy blue dress, the same shade as that suit. I curled my hair, put on lipstick, played the role. He walked in, saw the spread, and raised an eyebrow. "Wow, this looks amazing." "Thanks," I said, my voice calm, steady, cold. We sat, ate, chatted. He didn't suspect a thing. Until the doorbell rang. "Can you get that, honey?" I asked. He got up, still chewing, and strolled to the door. And there they were, the girl from the photos, and her parents, standing on our porch. "What are you doing here?" Mike's voice cracked. I walked over and stood behind him. "Surprise," I said softly. The girl stared at Mike. "You told me you were divorced. You said we had a future." Her father stepped forward. "You've been lying to our daughter?" Mike stammered. I can explain." "No need," I interrupted. "I already have." I stepped back and picked up the envelope from the counter, held it out. "Everything is in here, all the other women, the receipts, the photos, it's all real." Mike's face went pale. The girl started crying. Her mother gasped. Her father looked ready to punch someone. "I trusted you," the girl whispered. "And I married you," I added. Mike looked at me, his eyes wild. "Tanya, please." "Don't." I took a deep breath. "You need to leave, now." He didn't argue, just grabbed his keys and walked out, head down. And just like that, he was gone. The house was quiet again. Except now, I wasn't the same woman who had been sitting on the couch with a cast and a broken heart. I was someone stronger, someone ready to fight back. The silence that followed Mike's departure was both heavy and strange. For years, the hum of his presence, rushed footsteps, late-night phone calls, the squeak of his suitcase wheels, had filled the house like background noise I barely noticed. And now, without warning, it was gone. At first, it felt like standing in the eye of a hurricane. The air was too still, the space too quiet. The storm had passed, but what it left behind was a home littered with emotional debris. I didn't cry that night. I thought I would, but I didn't. Instead, I made myself a cup of tea, curled up on the couch, and stared at the place where he had sat just hours earlier. My heart was heavy, sure, but there was something else growing inside me too, something sharper. A sense of justice, a quiet pride, a feeling that I had taken back some power he had been chipping away for years. Still, the aftermath wasn't easy. The next morning, I had to face the kids. Lily and Max knew something was off the second they walked through the door after school. Mike's absence wasn't exactly unusual, but the energy in the house was different. Stiff, unsure, tense. "Where's Dad?" Max asked, dropping his backpack near the shoe rack. "He's not here," I said gently. "Is he on another trip?" Lily asked, more cautious. She was already beginning to put the pieces together. I sat them both down at the kitchen table, the same table where Mike and I had eaten our last meal together just the night before. "Kids," I began, my voice catching. "Your dad and we're going to be living apart for a while." Max's eyes grew wide. "Why? Did we do something wrong?" Lily asked quickly, worry lining her face. No, absolutely not," I said, reaching for their hands. "This isn't your fault. Your dad, he made some choices that weren't okay. And I had to make a choice too, a hard one." Lily looked at me carefully. She was older now, more aware. "Is it because of that lady we saw at the door?" I hesitated. "Yes, sweetheart, that's part of it." There was a pause. A silence filled with questions they didn't know how to ask, and I wasn't sure how to answer. "But do you still love him?" Max whispered. "Oh, Max," I swallowed hard. "I don't know," I said honestly. "I loved the version of him I married, but people change. Sometimes they become someone you don't recognize anymore." Neither of them spoke for a long time, but they stayed close that night, closer than usual. Lily fell asleep with her head on my shoulder. Max clutched my arm tightly as if afraid I might vanish too. I didn't vanish. In fact, I did the opposite. I started fighting. The very next day, I contacted a divorce attorney. It was a decision I'd wrestled with for weeks in the quiet corners of my mind, even before the confrontation. But now, there was no more hesitation. I needed to protect myself, my children, and everything we had built. Mike didn't take it well. He called, left voicemails, sent text after text, ranging from desperate apologies to hollow excuses. "Tanya, I made a mistake. I didn't mean to hurt you. We can work this out. Think of the kids." But I didn't respond. Not right away. I wasn't ready. And honestly, I wasn't sure I ever would be. The legal process was grueling. There were forms to fill out, finances to sort through, custody schedules to negotiate. At times, it felt like being dragged through wet cement with every step requiring effort I didn't think I had, but I kept going. I fought for the house, for alimony, for child support. Not out of vengeance, but because my children deserved stability. They deserved to live in the home they grew up in. They deserved not to suffer because of their father's lies. Mike contested everything. He tried to play the victim, tried to charm the mediators, but truth has a way of rising to the surface. And with Rick's detailed report in hand, there was no hiding from it. Eventually, the terms were settled. Mike moved into a small rental across town. We shared custody, though it was clear the kids preferred staying with me. The warmth of our home, the safety of routine, the comfort of knowing who they could count on, it all mattered more than toys or promises or weekend visits. With the legal chaos mostly behind me, I focused on something I had almost forgotten: myself. I returned to photography. At first, it was just editing old sessions, trying to warm up again. But soon, inquiries started coming in. A maternity shoot, a small wedding, a corporate headshot session. I said yes to all of it. Every job was a chance to rebuild. I got help from a neighbor, Martha, to manage shoots that required more walking or lifting. She was around my age, warm-hearted and always ready with a pot of tea and words of encouragement. "You're stronger than you think," she told me one evening as we packed up from a family session at the park. "Some days I don't feel it." "That's because you're in the middle of it. Wait till you look back." She was right. I was in the thick of transformation, grief and growth, and they often looked the same while they were happening: messy, painful, exhausting. But growth leaves a different kind of scar, one you learn to wear with pride. Lily flourished that summer. She joined an art club at school and started spending hours in her room sketching. One day, she shyly showed me a charcoal portrait she had drawn. It was me. Tired eyes, messy bun, slight smile. "You drew me?" I asked, touched. "You look strong in this," she said, like someone who keeps going. Tears welled up in my eyes and I hugged her tightly. Max found his spark too. He joined the local soccer team and made new friends. Watching him on the field, legs flying and face glowing with excitement, reminded me that joy wasn't gone. It just had to be refound. One evening, while editing a series of engagement photos, I stumbled upon a picture of Mike and me from our wedding day tucked in a forgotten folder on my desktop. I stared at it for a long time. We looked happy, and we probably were, back then. But now, that photo felt like a story that belonged to someone else. Someone who hadn't lived what I'd lived. Someone who hadn't grown into who I was now. So I deleted it. Not out of anger, but acceptance. It was time to make space. One Saturday morning, I decided to clear out the closet in our bedroom. I pulled out old jackets, ties, and dress shoes that no longer belonged. I packed them into boxes and labeled them with thick black marker. Donate. The act felt cleansing, like shedding a skin. At the bottom of the closet, I found a shoebox filled with letters, handwritten notes Mike had once left me. I read a few. They were sweet, romantic, full of promises. Promises he never kept. I placed the lid back on. This box I didn't donate. I put it in the attic instead. Some memories you don't throw away, but you don't keep them close either. They belong in the past. Life started to find a new rhythm. Quieter, yes. Simpler, definitely, but filled with intention. I cooked dinners without waiting for anyone to rush home. I took evening walks with the kids. I played music while cleaning. I laughed again. Real, belly-deep laughter. And every once in a while, I caught myself looking in the mirror and thinking, I like this version of me. Not because I was perfect, but because I was honest. One night, as I wrapped up an editing session, the doorbell rang. I opened the door to find Martha standing there, holding 2 lattes in a paper bag. "Girls' night?" she asked with a grin. "You read my mind," I smiled, stepping aside. We sat on the couch, sipping our drinks, talking about everything and nothing. "You know," she said after a while, "you're kind of my hero." I laughed. "Me? Why?" "Because you didn't crumble. You could have. No one would have blamed you, but you didn't. You rose." Her words settled into my chest like a warm hug. After she left, I stood by the window and looked out at the night sky. The moon hung low, bright and whole. I thought of all the nights I'd stood on that porch, wishing for a change, wondering when life would shift. And now, here I was, changed, shifted. Still healing, maybe always healing, but moving forward all the same. I whispered to the stars, "We're going to be okay." And for the first time in a long time, I truly believed it. Fall crept in gently that year. painting the trees in hues of amber and gold. The air was crisp, and the mornings began with steam rising from coffee mugs and little feet rushing around the kitchen. Life had finally begun to settle into something resembling peace. It wasn't perfect. There were still moments of sadness, of aching silence when the kids asked questions I couldn't fully answer. But there was also laughter again. Real laughter. Lily's art pieces began to cover our refrigerator. Max's soccer cleats always seemed to be muddy, proof that he was out there living, running, growing. And I, Tanya Burr, was slowly rediscovering myself. Not just the mother, not just the ex-wife, but the woman behind the camera lens, the artist, the woman who once dreamed and still had stories to tell. My photography business took off faster than I expected. Word had spread, thanks to some kind clients and a few glowing reviews online, and I found myself booking sessions weeks in advance. Family shoots, engagement photos, even a few small weddings. It felt like a blessing, one that had grown from the rubble of my broken marriage. One Friday afternoon, I was setting up for a family photo shoot in the park when Lily called. "Mom, guess what?" she said, her voice bursting through the speaker with excitement. "What's up, sweetheart?" "I won first place in the school art competition," I gasped, nearly dropping my lens cap. "Lily, that's amazing!" I drew a picture of our family, you, me, and Max. The teacher said it showed emotional resilience. "What does that mean?" I laughed. "It means you're stronger than most adults I know." We celebrated that night with ice cream and takeout, sprawled across the living room floor watching old Disney movies. It wasn't fancy, but it was perfect. Max, too, was thriving. His soccer team had made it to the semifinals, and he was beaming with pride. He asked me to come to every game, and I made sure I did, camera in hand, cheering louder than anyone else on the sidelines. One evening after his game, as we walked back to the car, he looked up at me and asked, "Mom, are you happy now?" The question took me by surprise. I stopped, crouched down to his level, and looked into those big brown eyes that reminded me so much of myself. "I think I am," I said. "I wasn't for a while, but yeah, I'm getting there." He nodded like he understood, even if he didn't quite. "I like it when you smile." I hugged him, tears stinging the corners of my eyes. Life, I realized, wasn't about perfection. It was about progress. Of course, Mike was still in the picture. Legally, anyway. He saw the kids on weekends, though often his visits were rushed or rescheduled. The novelty of trying to make things right had worn off, and reality had settled in. He'd been hit hard by the fallout. The woman he proposed to in Riverdale left him once she learned the truth. Others came forward, too. There were whispers of lawsuits, rumors of a demotion at work. His carefully crafted second life had collapsed, and now he was left trying to salvage whatever was left. He called sometimes, not often. And when he did, the conversations were clipped. "How are the kids?" "Good." "Is Max still playing soccer?" "Yep." "Tell them I said hi." "I will." Sometimes he'd try to say more. Apologies that came too late, questions about the past, moments where I could hear the regret in his voice, but I never let him pull me back in. That chapter of my life was closed. One morning, I received a message request on social media. It was from Jenna, the photographer who had unknowingly helped unravel my marriage. "Hey, Tanya, I hope this isn't weird, but I saw your recent photo series online, the one with the older couple and their anniversary picnic. It was breathtaking. Just wanted to say you've got an incredible eye." I smiled. I hadn't expected to hear from her again. "Thank you, Jenna. That means a lot, especially coming from you." She replied almost immediately. "Funny how the world works, huh? How one photo can change everything." "Yeah, funny and painful and necessary," I thought to myself. We exchanged a few more messages, and before long, she invited me to join a small photography collective she was part of, women supporting women in the industry. We shared tips, work, referrals. It became another lifeline. A sisterhood born out of brokenness, creativity, and grit. A few weeks later, I was asked to speak at a local community center for a workshop on storytelling through photography. At first I hesitated. Public speaking wasn't exactly my comfort zone. But then I thought about how far I'd come, about the women who might be sitting in that audience, quietly hurting, quietly surviving, needing to see someone who had crawled out of a dark place and stood in the light again. So I said yes. That day, I stood in front of a room full of women, some young, some older, some with babies on their laps, and I told them about moments, how life is really just a string of them, how some moments break us, and how others help us rebuild. I showed them photos, moments I had captured behind the lens, a mother hugging her daughter at graduation, a father seeing his child walk for the first time, a couple celebrating 50 years together. I told them about my own moment, the one where I saw a picture of my husband proposing to someone else and everything cracked wide open. And I told them about the moment that came after, the one where I chose myself. The applause at the end wasn't thunderous, but it was real, and a few women came up to hug me with tears in their eyes, whispering thank you like it was a prayer. One of them said, "You reminded me I'm not alone." That, more than anything, made it worth it. Later that evening, I returned home to find Lily and Max waiting at the door, both grinning. "Did you change the world today?" Lily asked, only half joking. "I think I might have helped someone find the courage to change their world," I replied, sweeping them into a hug. As the seasons changed again, I found that my heart did too. There was no dramatic love story waiting in the wings, no whirlwind romance to swoop in and rescue me. But there was peace, stability, contentment, and slowly, quietly, something new bloomed, hope. Hope that one day I had fallen in love again. Not because I needed someone, but because I would choose to love, freely and fully as the woman I had become. One snowy evening, as we were decorating the tree, Max hung a crooked star at the top and looked down proudly. "It's not perfect," he said. "Nope," I replied, admiring it anyway, "but it's ours." We spent the rest of the evening sipping hot cocoa, listening to old holiday songs, and laughing about how I once glued a pine cone to my hair in second grade. It wasn't the life I had imagined 10 years ago, but it was real, and it was good. Months passed. One day I got an email from a magazine editor. She had seen my work online and wanted to feature one of my family photo series in an upcoming spread. "We're doing a piece on resilience, families who've overcome." I smiled, my eyes welling with tears. I knew exactly what photo to send. It was one I had taken of Lily, Max, and me in the backyard. Sunlight filtering through the trees, laughter frozen in midair, our faces open and unguarded. A snapshot of life after the storm, of joy not despite the pain but because of it. When the issue came out, I held the magazine in my hands and stared at the page. There we were, a family that had bent but not broken. I took a deep breath and felt something I hadn't in a long time. Wholeness. The kind that doesn't depend on someone else's presence. The kind that grows quietly, like wildflowers after a wildfire. That night, I sat on the porch, as I often did, wrapped in a blanket, camera by my side. I looked up at the sky. It was the same sky that had watched over me when I was heartbroken, when I was healing, and now, when I was whole. I whispered again, like I had all those months ago, "We're going to be okay." Only this time I wasn't wishing. I was knowing. And with that, I stood, walked back inside to my children, my home, my life. Stronger. Wiser. Unapologetically Tanya Burr.